Eyewitnesses across North America report an aggressive bipedal canine cryptid. Is it real? Can we establish any kind of baseline or profile for this cryptid? All that and more in tonight's episode of Southeast Bigfoot Research Organization. Hi, I'm Kizaru Iwakura, and with me tonight is Jaster Lane Wynn as we discuss Dogman. How you doing, Jaster?
Not bad. Had a hard time parking the houseboat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Uh, I do want to know to start that we are working on our Sasquatch Academy episode. Unfortunately, Myth had a family emergency pop up, so he wasn't able to record today. So this is something that I kind of slapped together just so we could get something out to you guys and maybe just kind of vary up our output just a little bit. Because don't get us wrong, we are indeed Bigfoot researchers. I used to call ourselves armchair researchers, but Jaster pointed out to me while we were just planning this episode, we can't call ourselves that anymore because Myth is now our ground team. So
That is true. Also, real quick, for everybody that's joined over the last month, welcome to the last 2 or 3 years of this project. And hopefully, y'all are finding a lot of fun times here and y'all are getting a lot of good information. And if you guys have any questions down below, you can go ahead and start a conversation, give the comment section a roll, and give this a like or subscribe, the whole 9 yards. Share us with our Bigfoot friends, that whole nine. You know how to get that out of the way. But
yeah, we've been super thrilled with all the feedback we've been getting. We just hit 300 subscribers, and I want to say we're at the point where about 80% of our channel growth has happened in the last month. It's been really crazy, and we are so grateful for everyone's support. Whether you listen, you drop a like or a comment, that means the world to us. So enough flapping our gums. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. So for a long time, one of the cryptids I've been most fascinated by is the Dogman, primarily because of how far-fetched it is. The idea that there is a big werewolf-like entity roaming around the forests of North America in other countries is kind of hard to wrap your head around. But as I'm going to say in the last 10 to 15 years, discussion of this cryptid has become a lot more prevalent. Now, that's not to say that this cryptid hasn't existed in cryptozoology before, because for the longest time, the best known case of this cryptid was the Beast of Bray Road back in I believe it was the 60s and 70s. Though, honestly, there are still sightings that happen along that stretch of road to this day, even though at this point, I believe the land is privately owned, and the people who own the land aren't too happy when researchers show up.
no, I wouldn't be either. I'm bringing it up on the Google Maps right now. This is farmland, baby.
Yeah, it is.
100%. This looks like back home.
There's nothing out there. It's a very long lonely stretch of road, dark as hell at nighttime. And but for a long time, there's just been a lot of sightings of an animal matching the description of what I can only really call a werewolf out there. And I'm not really going to get into a very a granular timeline of sightings of this creature, because today the goal is to have more of a general discussion about Dogman and some of the problems inherent with researching it. So I wanted to bring up the Beast of Bray Road as kind of our baseline to talk about, and kind of the folklore that grows out of it, and how the culture around Dogman is kind of evolving.
Right. My first question is, it seems to me, now correct me if I'm wrong, that the first real mention of a Dogman-like creature outside of your errant newspaper clippings that you can find dating back to the 1800s, generally in the South, is the Beast of Bray Road, right? It also seems to be the most researched of all of the subsequent sightings, and it to the point where it even has its own name, right?
Yeah, so the Beast of Bray Road is kind of interesting because it was local folklore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were manhunts for this thing out there, and it became a thing where people were being drawn out there and such. And when I first heard about Dogman, this was one of the first things that got talked about. And the way I heard about Dogman was through everybody's favorite documentary series, Monster Quest.
Really?
The modern In Search Of, if there ever was. Uh,
See, I must have missed that episode when I was a kid.
uh, uh, the reason it stuck with me is because there was an artist in that episode who had an encounter with the Beast of Bray Road, and he spent his entire artistic career just making art of it, and he made a painting of it kind of leering out of the cornfield. And that image of this tall, powerful, dark figure shrouded in corn kind of stuck with me. And from that point onward, I was interested in it, and I dug up as much information as possible. One thing people have to understand is that, unlike Sasquatch, which has had a dedicated half a century long, plus, legacy of researchers and enthusiasts looking into it, compiling reports, that kind of thing, Dogman doesn't have that luxury. It is, I wouldn't say it's a new topic, because realistically, people have been talking about it for at least 25 to 30 years. But it's been kind of, I wouldn't say taboo, per se. Taboo isn't quite the right word for it. But it's definitely been something people roll their eyes at a bit more, which is, I find, kind of interesting, because, even people who research Sasquatch, it's kind of a controversial topic, which is kind of interesting in and of itself, because, alright, you can believe there's some kind of ape man or relic hominid roaming around the woods, but you can't get behind a dog man or relic canine or whatever roaming around the woods.
Right. And one thing that I kind of keep thinking about whenever you're talking about that, it's like a niche within a niche.
It is.
And
it is. That's what makes it so difficult.
We were at the Bigfoot Fest, right? We were at the VIP dinner, okay? So, outside of, people's, fiancés or, extras that came just for the free meal, right? They weren't exactly in on the Bigfoot thing, but definitely somebody there was, right?
Yeah.
Now, there was a whole group of us at our table that was like, so what do you guys think about Dogman? Yeah. That was an interesting conversation, because that was exactly like what you were saying. Even here in Kentucky, where there is a regional Dogman legend, it's still 50-50, even within hardcore Bigfooters, right?
Yeah, no, that was a really enlightening experience for me. So, really briefly, just to explain. So last year, around this time of year, Jasper and I went to the, what was it, Red Canyon?
The Red River Gorge, the Stanton, Kentucky.
We went to the Red River Gorge National Park. There was a Bigfoot festival held out there. It's a very beautiful part of the country, by the way. We were in love with it. And we went to the VIP dinner that was there. Cliff Brockman was there. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, rest in peace, was there. A couple of other significant people. Also, the Mountain Monsters guys were there.
God bless them. They were great.
Yeah, no, they're very fun to talk to. They're definitely entertaining.
Got to talk to Willie. That was amazing.
Yeah. Yes. And we so while we were there at the dinner enjoying all this amazing down home cooking, prepared in a professional kitchen, I kind of picked up on someone down the table talking about Dogman, and I kind of shifted down a couple seats, and I was like, hey, you talking about Dogman? They're like, yeah. So we struck up a conversation, and naturally, as we're talking about it, more people around the table are listening in, because I'm talking across the table at somebody who's about 2 seats down from me. And there were a variety of interpretations I got. So the individual I was talking to, he was on the same page as me, and he believed in Dogman, but he was just as confounded by it as I am. There were others who were pretty skeptical of it, and there were some who were skeptical but receptive, and then there were some who were skeptical and didn't want to hear about it. And just having such a range of reactions in a room full of cryptozoologists, whether they be amateur, professional, armchair, whatever you want to call it, was fascinating to me. And that's why I kind of keep banging this drum. Because in some ways, it's a new frontier for cryptid research. And so the big question I'm asking today, is it possible to make a profile for something that is a phantom? And why do I say Dogman is a phantom? Well, unlike Bigfoot, there's hardly any footprint casts, if at all. Every single alleged photograph of it has been debunked. I think the list at this point is close to 13 or 14. They literally have a pinned post on the r/Dogman subreddit that explains all of the debunked photos. and I guarantee you've seen at least one of them. There is no really big famous piece of film that we can point to center a discussion around the way the PG film does exist, as controversial as it is nowadays. What we really only have to go off of with this is we don't even we like there might be a handful of recordings of possible vocalizations, but because there's not as big of a body of possible evidence, it's a lot harder to build a profile and hypothetical behavior. So as a result, you only have eyewitness reports to go off of. And anybody who's ever done any kind of investigating ever, whether it's been criminal, cryptozoological, knows that eyewitness reports do not a case make. They are always your baseline. Because the problem with eyewitnesses is that they are unreliable. Jaster, there's this really famous experiment you may have heard of. They got about 50 people together, and they went to Central Park, and they staged a mugging in the middle of this group of 50 people.
Yes, I've seen that one.
And then immediately afterwards, they interviewed all of them, and the accuracy of the statements was horrendous. None of the data was consistent. Someone flat out completely described another person that wasn't even there.
Right.
And speaking as the son of a police officer myself, and having taken some investigative courses and stuff like that, and that kind of, study, methodology, it makes it frustrating for me as somebody who is interested in this cryptid and does carry a torch for it, because these reports can only go so far. So, while with Bigfoot, there are some things that, while they're still hypotheses, we're pretty confident about, in terms of behaviors, right? Like, there's a big enough body of evidence that suggests, like, for instance, rock throwing. What's another one that you bring up frequently?
Oh, with Bigfoot, it'd be like bluff charges. You're talking about hooping, clapping on the side of walls. If you're talking about signs of aggression, right?
Yeah.
Now,
but basically stuff that we are pretty certain we know about in terms of behavior.
Things that are generally primate in display. We've seen that similar behavior across different primate species.
Dogman, it's harder to establish a profile for it. So, now it doesn't help that there are a couple of factors at play here that also make researching Dogman more difficult. And I think primarily above them is that the nature of it is known to be more aggressive and antagonistic. Sasquatches, for the most part, are pretty passive and benevolent. So long as you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. Right?
It's an odd one. I'll give them that.
That generally, so long as you respect their territory and their space, they won't try to drive you out of it. They might get a little surprised that you're there, but we're also surprised we're there. Now, this is, of course, again, going off of what we know. Dogmen, at least from everything I have ever read, listened to, or discussed with people who have had field experience with it or have had run-ins with one, I cannot say the same about them. They are prone to stalking people. You know how one of the signs of Bigfoot habitation in an area is like missing livestock?
Yes.
Like chicken coops get raided, stuff like that. Dogmen are even worse about that. But they'll like maul shit.
Right? I've heard about that. Like a lot of mutilations.
Yes.
I would generally like to point out too that like it would be it's easier to get a fear response out of something that looks like let's be honest, like something out of Underground. Remember that 2008 movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I probably butchered the title of it, but throw a clip up there. You know what I'm talking about? Like it ain't Twilight, it's the adult version from that era. Like if you had that staring at you, I wouldn't exactly want to stay and collect footprints. You know?
Absolutely. If we're talking about comparisons to, bipedal canines in film, the descriptions I often see compared to the most by people who have had an encounter, it's the werewolf in the movie Van Helsing and the werewolves in the movie Dog Soldiers.
Which are the same era, isn't it?
Yeah, both came out about within 2 years of each other. And having seen both of those movies and loving them deeply, I would not want anything to do with the woods if I ever saw one of those sons of bitches out there.
Can I point something out as well?
Yeah.
I know historically, if you want to point back to the validity of such a creature, many people go to the Beast of Galvadan, right, in France. That's a big one, right? And it's a very historically well documented encounter of essentially what could be the last known dire wolf ever, from the size of the thing, right?
Yeah, no, the Beast of Gavadan has, like, even before I was into Dogman, was a historical account that I was always fascinated by because, well, first off, for those who do not know about the Beast of Gavadan, it is a 16th century account of a man-eating wolf that terrorized a village in France. And it became such a problem that the crown became notified about it, and they sent a hunter out there. The thing is, though, they did eventually kill the thing, but then it came back multiple times. About 3 different times.
The problem is as well, like, we have on record that they dispatched, I think, like 1,000 men or something too.
There was a very big hunting party for it, yeah.
Like 1,000 regular soldiers, plus,
yeah.
I believe, more than one huntmaster from the royal court went out.
Yes. Yeah, no, they took it very seriously when it happened. And it's a very strange historical incident because at the time, France, they actually had werewolf hunts. Kind of akin to witch hunts that happened in colonial England. In France, they were werewolf hunts. If you got accused of being a werewolf, that was a life-ruining thing, and it would probably lead to your death. But the thing is, there are actually a couple of cases of people who got accused of being werewolves who probably were engaged in some kind of criminal activity. So it really... Not to say that these people actually were werewolves. They were more likely, serial killers and or cannibals, or both.
Right. But let's just say the Beast of Galvadan, at the very least, we had photos or paintings of the thing. We know that it wasn't what we're getting reports of here.
Yeah, there are recorded accounts from that time. There are a couple of artistic renditions of it from the time period. And
that's not a werewolf. That's a big
wolf. That's not a werewolf. But it was a big fucking wolf for sure, but it's not a werewolf. Really, so if I'm going to go down the list here and kind of start talking about like some of the other difficulties involved with Dogman, one thing that exists in the conversation around Dogman that makes people very hesitant to go out and do fieldwork related to it is that, so while there are no confirmed and verified deaths related to it, it's not out of the question.
Do we have any Dogman researchers go missing?
No. As far as I know, there are no researchers who have turned up missing. There are no people who have been... I've heard one report of somebody who did get attacked when they encountered one, but they managed to get away. But this is one report, and that is not something you look at and say, well, there you go, there's your proof.
Right.
Just to really briefly go over, a gentleman was driving on a really icy mountain road in the middle of winter. He was on his way home from like a trip or whatever, and he saw something in the middle of the road, and he thought somebody had been hit. So he gets out and goes up to it, and it's actually a fucking Dogman lying in the middle of the road, and it gets up and attacks him, and he manages to pull away, but it gets his arm really bad, and it is just gushing. The thing flees downhill from him. He runs to his truck, and he throws open his suitcase, and he pulls out a sweater, and he rips that fucker up and, makes a emergency tourniquet out of it. And then he drove home, got medical attention, but he never really told his wife what happened because, like, he didn't know how to explain it to her, and he was kind of ashamed it happened. And very alarming story for sure, but that's just one story. And while I don't want to doubt the individual who told it because I heard him, say it on a podcast, it's still one guy on a podcast, and you can only take him at face value, and that's a problem you repeatedly run into with Dogman. It's only eyewitness accounts. It's only being able to take people at face value. And I want to take these people at face value. But as somebody who holds himself to a higher standard of researching things and, establishing credibility, that's not good enough.
Well, I think the thing that kind of gets it with me and it makes me think a little bit deeper on the subject is specifically Linda Godfrey, right?
Yes.
Rest her soul as well.
Linda. Yeah, God bless her. She was the primary researcher for this type of cryptid. Her blog's still up, and you can go browse it. Unfortunately, it's not very organized, and it takes a lot of time to sift through. And a lot of it is her going and talking to people who
Had
make
encounters.
art or stuff like that, and it's just this. But she does have a library of encounters and stuff, and she started with researching the Beast of Bray Road. She was actually a journalist at the time who got sent to cover the story, and that turned into a lifelong fascination for her, and she eventually became kind of the foremost expert on it, just from the body of work she created and the people she interviewed.
Yeah, I would almost call her the foremost Dogman researcher
Oh,
of all
absolutely.
time.
Oh yeah, no, I have nothing but deep respect for Linda Godfrey and the body of work she had. I wish it was more influential than it actually is. Unfortunately.
Well, and let's just highlight the fact that in all of her years of reporting and everything else that had happened, like she had the understanding that these people had seen something strange that
Right.
had changed their lives dramatically.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's what really sold her on the idea in the first place, right? In
Yes, and
that,
that's actually the perfect way to transition into the next thing I wanted to talk about,
okay,
which is the question of what is there. I'm going to go over common themes I have found in eyewitness accounts and reports, and I have listened to hundreds of them. I've read hundreds of them. I would like to think I am knowledgeable about the subject, but I do not want to sit here and claim I am an expert on the subject because I myself have not had any encounters. Personally, speaking as an enthusiast about this cryptid, I would prefer it stay that way.
yeah, I don't know anybody that
Um,
wants to go see a dog man. That's
um,
definitely different of Bigfoot researchers.
but as somebody who has spent a long time, reading and listening and studying and, kind of generally meditating on this topic, these are things that I have heard about. And the first one is the psychological aspect. For whatever reason, people who have Dogman encounters experience trauma from it in a way that people who encounter Sasquatch don't. Now, this isn't to say that people who encounter Sasquatch don't have trauma. In cases where there have been more aggressive encounters or series of behaviors, there has been trauma. Obviously, the Siege of Honobia is a really good example of that. There's also the Cowman affidavit, if you remember that one.
Yeah, the one lady
Um,
that's the intro to Sasquatch Chronicles, she was
yes,
pretty bent out of shape about her encounter.
yeah,
The
but
911
those are
call encounter.
yeah, but those are the exception, not the rule. Not so with Dogman. It's very common for people who are lifelong, woodsmen, adventurers, nature enthusiasts to all of a sudden not want to go out into the woods ever again and become shut-ins. Or if they do go outside, they won't do so without being heavily armed. They don't want to be outside at night. They will start setting up lights around their home. And then of course there is the recurring nightmares, which that's one of the biggest ones that pops up, is that these people will have recurring nightmares of them reliving the encounter, of dogmen getting to their homes and hurting their loved ones, and all sorts of other things that don't occur with Bigfoot. And this has always stuck with me because there's nothing else in the world I can think of where just seeing one of these things will scare you so much it has a deep, profound psychological effect. It's one thing to survive getting attacked by a bear. That's a traumatizing experience. You nearly lost your life. But, if you saw a wolf out in the wild, you wouldn't be having nightmares about it. You would be like, wow, what a majestic animal. I'm so lucky to have seen such a solitary creature. And then you would go on with your life, right?
Well, I think the other thing that we need to point out is there are multiple encounter stories and reports that have Dogman either following the car for a while, or if it's a hunter or somebody who is hiking or walking, it'll follow them back home.
Yes. Yeah, they tend to stalk people. So one common trope you will find in Dogman encounters is somebody will be driving down a highway, typically at nighttime, and they're going at a decent cruising speed, right? And then all of a sudden, a entity will come out onto the road and start running alongside them and looking into their vehicle, and maybe even attempt to get into it.
At like 45 miles an hour.
And so at this point, they will start, putting their pedal to the metal. They start going 50, 60, 70, 80, and this thing is still keeping up with them just fine without breaking a sweat. And after a certain amount of distance, it'll just stop and peel off and leave them alone, leaving the driver shook, frightened, and hysterical. It's a behavior that I find alarming. I think the experience, the report that kind of sticks with me the most. Do you remember the one about the trucker that we read a while back, and how this thing, he was at eye level with him, even though he's in a big rig,
and it stuck with him for a while it was going down the road.
Yes, yeah, no. So, and that kind of brings up the point of how big Dogmen are, and what the average size for them is compared to what the average size of a Sasquatch is. So at this point, Jasper, you and I are generally in agreement that Sasquatches tend to get larger as you go further north, due to, I don't remember the name of the.
We generally like to call it northern gigantism, but there is a rule for it. I can't remember.
There is actually a natural law. Editing, Jasper, throw that up on the screen for us.
Yes, I gotcha.
With Dogmen, it's not quite the same. I have not been able to discern any kind of pattern in terms of height or anything like that to these guys. But generally, if I was to give you an average height for a Dogman, the ones on the small side are 7 to 8 feet tall.
Yeah, I would agree.
Which in general is about a foot or two taller than the average Sasquatch.
And every bit as muscled out as a Sasquatch can be.
Yeah.
That's what really gets me about the whole thing. It's like, these things are tanks. Like, if you were to hit this with a car, holy cow. Like, I mean, it'd be like hitting a moose. Or an elk.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stories where people with firearms encounter them, and then they shoot at them, and they basically shrug it off because because of how dense their muscle mass is.
I've also had weird encounter stories where, depending on how spiritual you like to think yourself to be, either these things like are transparent and bullets don't affect them, or maybe the silver hypothesis might be a part of it. And like, bullets tend to just not affect them for a variety of reasons, kind of depending on the report.
So this is my personal hypothesis, and I'm saying hypothesis because there's nothing to prove it. I lean toward the more naturalist explanation, is that it's simply muscle density. And there are animals in nature that we can point at that are very similar. Moose and elk are very large animals with very dense muscles, and they are very notoriously hard to kill on a hunt because you need a caliber of bullet that is able to pierce through a lot of that.
Hippos.
So it's either So, and I think Dogmen are very similar in that regard. I don't know if fur density has anything to do with it. If it does, it's probably a negligible amount.
I can kind of come in here a little bit. Okay, so as a hunter, I would say if you want to talk about fur density as a defensive measure as far as against a gun or any sort of projectile thing, it doesn't really stack up. Like, the bears have weird subdermal layers in their skin, right? Them and other type of animals in their cousin family tree, they're hard to grab, and they have really loose fur, right? That can kind of help. However, the biggest thing that a wild animal is going to have that's going to protect them from any projectile is, ironically, feathers. Turkeys are the biggest one that you can tell from an American hunter standpoint, right?
One of the things I think of the most in that regard is the Australian Emu War.
Right. If you're not hitting headshots, you're not doing much against a bird at range, especially one with bigger feathers. Like, I've seen, I believe my cousin, whenever I was younger, whiffed a shot against a turkey, went low, and the bird ran off because, like, even though it was 12 gauge buckshot, the fact that it was, 40, 50 yards away, it just basically didn't have enough lethality to get through all of the down, all of the feathers, all that kind of crap, right?
Yeah, right.
Fur isn't going to help you like that. Muscle density will. Like I said, hippos are stupid. Water
Yeah.
buffalo are stupid, right?
Rhinos.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I can get that. Like, the thing that makes it hard, like I said before, I kind of joked about it, is that if you're somebody who had a Dogman encounter, you know what you're not likely to do within the next day or two is go back to get footprint casts. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Maybe somebody else might help you if they've got a gun and friends, you know what I mean? But nobody really wants to be there, you know,
No.
unless they're crazy.
No.
So, like, I can see why footprint casts aren't normally found, right? I can understand why audio isn't normally found because, like, who would be out there to go get footprint casts right after one was there? I don't want to meet God. Like, come on now. The other way is audio, in my opinion, would probably be indistinguishable in a lot of ways from a wolf unless you were good enough with audio analysis to be able to discern ranges, like distances and how big something sounds at what distance that they sound like they're from. It's a lot of weird kind of pseudoscience in a way, right?
Yes.
You're doing a lot of guesswork in order to make a hypothesis or a guesstimation on a call, right? Exactly. So it's hard. Like, can I bring up for a second the fact that one of the last things that came out about Dogman was that one photo of a dude in a really roughed up fursuit walking down the highway, and we were like, what is that? It just looks like he rolled around in the bushes a little bit and started running his way home. Yeah. But like, it's hard to find anything, right?
So you mentioned bluff charges earlier that Sasquatches do.
Right.
Dogmen are way more prone to it. One of the kind of stories I hear the most often is from hunters, which is kind of interesting because when you talk about the spread of individuals you hear Sasquatch reports from, you hear them more from hikers, pedestrians, commercial drivers, stuff like that, right?
Right.
But with Dogmen, I'd say about the overwhelming majority of memorable reports that I have heard are from, there's two kinds: hunters out in the woods and people at home at night.
Yeah.
And so they will bluff charge hunters. They will pursue hunters to the edge of a territory. There's one particular encounter that I remember listening to. A gentleman and his friend were checking up on stuff around his property, and they were in a side-by-side, and this chased them and tried to, like, knock the fucker over while they were driving out of there.
It also sounds like the cowman affidavit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Lots of very hostile behavior. I remember one story of a gentleman who was up in, not a blind, it's like a tree stand.
Yeah.
Who had a Dogman find his tree stand and just sit beneath it all night, waiting for him to come down.
Oh my god, that'd be terrible.
Yeah, I remember other behavior is if you have a campfire, they will kind of push at the edges of the light and try to, like, constantly distract you. And if we're talking about distraction, one really concerning behavior I have heard a lot of in eyewitness reports is that sometimes they will have another one with you. And what they will do is they will have one, and they will let themselves be seen and draw your attention while another one tries to get behind you and ambush you. And that's frightening.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely terrible situation to be in. I know, I remember listening to an interview of a Bigfoot researcher in the Big Thicket. And I know this was years ago on Sasquatch Chronicles. But essentially these guys, this husband and wife team, were out trying to find evidence of Bigfoot in the area. And they had kind of reported in that the group that they were trying to find more information on that they suspected to be in the area had started moving out for no real reason. And then they were the husband was down in a creek bed while the wife was up at the car, and the husband had seen a Dogman in the bushes, right? And he was focused in on the bushes. Now, the wife, who was up the hill a little bit on the road with the truck, noticed a second Dogman, and that one was circling around the husband, and it was not really paying attention to her. Well, she got on the horn with the car, started making all kinds of racket, and all of a sudden the second Dogman broke away. And the guy got back up to the truck, and they got out of there. So that is something that I've heard before as well. But also, it seems as though the biggest thing that I've noticed with Bigfoot researchers and Dogman is that they tend to notice or have Dogman experiences after their suspected Bigfoot troop that they're trying to track just leaves the area for no good reason. I've heard that a couple of times.
Yeah, so discussing Dogman and Bigfoot. Now, I want to put out there right now, just from the rare stories I have heard of Dogmen and Squatches being in the same area. Sadly, it is not a Friday Night Raw, Monday Night SmackDown kind of situation where they're going in there and throwing hands with each other. If a troop of Squatches is aware of Dogmen in the area, they will literally pack up and move somewhere else. And if they do have to cohabitate, which is extremely rare, but not unheard of. I've heard of maybe 3 situations in the whole time I've been, looking into cases and studying. They will have this weird, uneasy truce, basically, where there will be a big no man's land between their 2 territories, and there's no problem as long as they don't cross that.
Right. LBL, I think, is probably the most reported area for that.
Yes. And we will talk about LBL in a bit, because that is one that comes up a lot. So this is the part where we get into the 2 parts of it that are... This is when we start getting into stuff that is a bit hard to swallow, because it sounds outrageous. So the first one is, and this is the one that kind of keeps me up at night in regards to these guys, is that Dogmen are not above trying to get into homes.
Right, and they seem to know how doors work.
They know how doors work, and at least in one case, they also seem to know how light bulbs work. Because I heard of a story where a guy checked his light bulb on his back porch and found that it had been unscrewed and turned off.
I've heard that also in Bigfoot encounters, very rarely, but that also could just be, I mean, to be fair, that could be crackhead behavior,
Yeah.
Like, we can't discern, we can't take that off the table, really. I mean,
they do be up in them hills on that meth.
If that's the kind of area you're from, I'm from that area. And a lot of Bigfoot encounters from our part of the United States, we do have to filter for meth head activity. Okay?
Yeah. So, but people will find scratch marks around the bases of their windows, on their doors, and in very rare cases where they leave a door unlocked, they will come in. People will find urine in their homes. They will find scratch marks around the home, stuff like that. And it's... Every time I hear an encounter where a story where a Dogman did manage to get into a home, I'm always grateful that the homeowners never seemed to be home when it happened, because I'm just so frightened for those people. But there's another habit that they have. They do a lot of window peering.
Yeah, I've heard that one. There's a couple of photos that got big virality that were suspected Dogman photos of them kind of peering in on the windowsill.
Mm-hmm.
I remember those.
Yeah. Are you talking about the ones that TT looked at?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that I showed you. Yeah, that I'm still of the belief it was a Dogman.
That one is creepy. No, like...
It is. It's very creepy.
What about...
Editing Jaster, put that up.
Oh, I will. No, worry about it.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to all these different type things, like, what would you consider common factors as like in the reports?
Like what do you mean?
So, if you were to put up some bullet points here, right? We got like a general overall, what's the word? Aggressive nature to the demeanor of them, right? They tend to either be highway encounters or homeside encounters, rather than roadside encounters or wilderness encounters. Now, what hunters do see them tend to be a lot more aggressive in nature than a Bigfoot encounter.
Yes. So one bullet point I would like to add on here is that this is probably one of the more disconcerting facts about them. there seems to be a kind of sadistic nature to them that I can't quite explain, which alarmingly points to a form of intelligence to them. As time has gone on, I've leaned more and more towards the Bigfoot is an ape line of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Dogmen, I still don't know what to make of them, because every time I think I'm starting to wrap my head around them, I find some new bit of information that starts popping up in eyewitness reports that makes me have to go back to the drawing board.
Right.
It almost seems like they enjoy frightening people. For instance, there will be reports where people will turn around and run, and then they will chase after them, and they will nip at their heels, but only just, and like act like they're kind of going to grab them, but intentionally miss, basically.
Right.
They will peer at you from tree lines, and obviously there's the window peering and the trying to open doors and stuff like that. I have heard one story where one actually did manage to get into a house, and the only reason it wasn't able to get to the witness was because they managed to lock their bedroom door before it got to them, and they had to replace their front door afterward. Sometimes they will just stand there and watch how frightened you are, and that alarms me a lot, because it's almost like it's soaking it in and enjoying the experience, which is something I can't fathom.
To me, that's where this gets supernatural. Because when it comes to profiles, right, and profiles of behavior and cryptozoology, or when you start looking into other types of folklore or other types of study just in general, when it comes to different types of spirits that you find in cultures across the world, there seems to be a subcategory of succubus-like spiritual entities that like to feed off of fear. And that's what they like to get out of their victim, right? Is to elicit a fear response, because that energy is what they feed on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a camp that does believe that Dogman is a spiritual entity rather than a physical one. And they tend to lean on that part of the argument, is that they always have this sadistic nature to them, where they're trying to elicit a fear response, a true terror response out of you. And they're they'll follow you home. They'll look through your windows. And if they're not there to do anything besides annoy you, right? Outside of scaring the shit out of you, what are they getting out of it, right?
Yeah. In regards to that, there are some stories I have heard. There's not a lot of them, so I don't really give them a lot of weight. Because you know me, I tend to be a rationalist when it comes to cryptids. That people who pray drive them away.
I've heard that more than a few times. Yep. Like, that's kind of another reason that I put this more in a spiritual category, right? Where, like, okay, we've got something that is definitely scaring the crap out of people that are seeing it. It's getting seen with enough frequency to stay in the human psyche, and it seems to have some sort of succubus type quality that is psychically leeching fear out of whoever is encountering it, right? To me, that mixed with that gives me more of a basis to think, oh, maybe we're talking about some sort of spirit, right? Or some sort of evil spirit.
I'm sure if you go looking in Native American folklore, you could probably turn up some kind of entity that would share traits with it, akin to how we have the hairy wildman for Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not an angle that I've really pursued because, well, that requires sitting down and hitting the books. And unfortunately, and I'm not above it.
That's some obscure book reading to find, to get the hard copies of, like
that's a lot of legwork to go through for that, and there are resources for that, but it would take a lot of work to really get anything substantial out of it. The last point I want to bring up is mauling and mutilations. So I mentioned earlier that there are reports of people being attacked, and to my knowledge, there are no confirmed and verified accounts of murders by these entities. Now, I have heard stories where people were out in the woods with their dog, and their dog saved them from one, and they ended up having to go back and get their poor dog, who was like had all their bones broken, was just completely annihilated and had to bury that poor thing. And I've also heard one case that the dog somehow survived and lived on into old age, which that made me happy. Nobody likes hearing about people's dogs dying, right?
Right, and you hear that a
um,
lot sometimes whenever you get into the more pessimistic corners of cryptozoology. You can definitely go down a
but
rabbit hole.
just in general with other animals, dogmen are very much predators in nature. As
Right.
opposed to how, at this point, we're pretty sure that Sasquatches are scavengers and opportunistic predators. Dogmen seem to exclusively be predators.
Right. And let's go back to LBL for a second before we wrap it up. So, like,
Yes,
now that we're
that is.
talking about the predatory nature of these things, the beast of LBL is like one of those hometown cryptids for me, right? Because as a Kentuckian, and this is one that, as far as we know, there are a bunch of different narratives on this. It really depends on who you talk to.
All
And
right, so if we talk about the land between the lakes itself, two things that I can say confidently is that there are a lot of Sasquatch encounters in the area and there are a lot of Dogman encounters in the area. And the thing that seems to denote them is the river that passes between the park. If you're on one side of the river, you're going to see Sasquatches. And if you're on the other side, you're going to see Dogmen. That's what I can say with confidence based on just the amount of reports I've heard. What I cannot say confidently is the famous Beast of LBL story is true. For those who are not familiar with Dogman folklore, the story goes is that there was a family of three, a father, a mother, and a daughter, who went out camping in an RV, and they were all viciously slaughtered. It was total carnage, blood and guts everywhere. Part of the girl's body was up in a tree. It was a mess. The problem is that the report that this whole thing is submitted in is written very
flowery.
It's very flowery and has the air of yellow journalism to it. And as somebody who actually has a hobby of creative writing on the side and has been published before, it reeks a lot of somebody trying to write a novel and embellish it as much as possible, because there are times where it completely forgets that it's a secondhand report and it goes into acting like it was there. It alleges that there were multiple law enforcement agencies from different counties present, and there's a couple of logistical problems I have with it. First and foremost is, so if you go looking for any kind of murders or maulings in the LBL area, there is a story about a man who murdered two little girls and then dumped their bodies in a creek. Very tragic, by the way. But you can't find anything about this. Now, I know some people will immediately go, well, that's proof in and of itself because they're covering it up. I am not as cynical or quick to jump to conclusions as that, because regardless of whether or not any kind of person in the government wanted this to get out, if there was an incident of this scale that required this many personnel to respond to, we would have heard something from somebody by now. Now, I know what's about to be said in response to that to people who are in the Dogman conversation, but there's a couple of people out there who talk about it. Yes, there are. There's about two of them, and neither of them agree with each other. And both of their stories are constantly shifting, which does not paint the greatest picture to me.
Even from somebody who can understand a government cover-up angle kind of conversation, it seems to be used as an excuse rather than a reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we've discussed the angle of government cover-ups before. We just a couple weeks ago we were talking about the Department of I think it was the Department of the Interior. Was it the Interior? No, it was the Fish and Wildlife Department or something like that. Basically, whatever part of the U.S. government is in charge of all the parks and stuff, an internal memorandum they put out and had to rationalize what they would do in the event of a Sasquatch confirmation, which lets us know, hey, this is a conversation they have had. And it also confirmed pretty much everything we'd already assumed, is that if there was a cover-up, it would be far more mundane in nature, because it would primarily be to protect industries such as logging and the national parks. I can't say the same about this alleged incident, because this is the last bit that really gets me. So, the thing is, the land between the lakes is not just a national park, it's also a community. Chester and I are both from, relatively small towns, even though he lives in the big city now. And one thing about any kind of small town culture is that if something big happens, people immediately know, and it gets spread around fast. long before the internet, there was the local rumor mill. And if a murder as savage, brutal, and violent as the one that exists in that story happened, it would have been enshrined in the local lore for forever. And every single person who has ever gone out there and interviewed people to try to learn about it, every single person has said, we don't know anything about it. I've never heard that story before. What are you talking? Now, again, there's already the response of, well, they don't want you to know, or they don't like talking about it. I will tell you right now, if you sit on a front porch with any Meemaw, with like a cup of tea, like sweet tea, the kind of shit they will tell you if they think they can get away with it is astonishing.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody would have talked about it at this point. It's the same reason why I go, it's the same logic I slap people who think the moon landings were faked with, because it's like a production of that scale requiring technology that didn't exist at the time would require so much like collaboration, innovation, and documentation that something would have come up by now if it was fake. And that's why I have no faith in the Land Between the Lakes story, because it just comes off as exploitative, shock value kind of creative writing.
Right. And what we do hear that comes out of there is, in a lot of ways, very interesting anyway. I don't really feel like there needed to be a whole lot of extra going on. But each one of these stories does have to have a location, right?
I remember there was an eyewitness who actually lived in the LBL. He lived in a trailer with his mom. And there was a Dogman that took issue with that. It would regularly show up and slam into the side of their trailer and try to get in. And it got to the point where they eventually just moved out.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I mean, even if that was, no matter what that was, I don't think that would be fine.
No.
And, like, let's just also bring out the fact that, like, yeah, there are bears in the area, but it's like black bears. They're not that size.
No.
It's not even close.
No.
Now, like, do I think that maybe somebody could potentially, if they're drunk, see a bear on its back legs trying to look through their window at night, you know, trying to see what that good smell is, you know what I'm saying? Pulling up on that Yogi Bear stuff, maybe.
Not out of the question.
It's not that big of a thing.
No.
I think more people would be like, guys, the bears are out today. Like, you don't get that often.
Yeah, they'd be like, there's a burr out there, you know? Black burr, you know, so it's... so I guess, what conclusion did we draw from this conversation? Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of conclusions to draw. Until we can really get some kind of solid photographs, more audio recordings, footprint casts, anything like that, the Dogman is... I'm afraid it's going to remain fringe in cryptozoology, which disappoints me, because I would like to know more about it and what the deal with it is. In fact, I didn't even get into the part of the conversation where the narrative of the government is far more common with Dogman. That's honestly its own conversation to get into, and I don't want to touch on that today because we've already covered so much ground as we have.
Definitely round two.
Yeah, definitely a round two. Something to come back to for sure. So I think for now, that's pretty much going to wrap everything up. Yeah?
Yes, sir. So,
all right.
If you guys like this episode, just let us know. You know the whole ding. Get the like, comment, and subscribe. Share us with your Bigfoot friends. And once again, thank you guys for showing up to the community. It's great to have you all here now. Hopefully, we can continue this thing and keep it on moving. So, until next time, you all have a wonderful night. My name is Jaster Land Wynn with the Southeast Bigfoot Research Organization, and you all have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.